Welcome to the first episode in the Native American series of the Artful Teaching Podcast. I'm Heather Francis, and I am excited for what is about to be presented to you. What I'm about to present is an interview with Callie Flox, my co-host, and with Brenda Beyal, who is the program coordinator of the Native American Curriculum Initiative. And I interviewed these two wonderful women about where this initiative came from, what's the origin story, and how did we develop partnerships with 8 sovereign nations in the state of Utah to create arts integrated lesson plans for children in schools. It's really an amazing story, and we've had a lot of people asking us about our work with Native Americans and amplifying Native voices in the classroom, so I felt that this was an important story to share. So this recording was done several months ago when we were just documenting our process to be sure that we had a great archive of what's been done, but it's time for us to share this story with you. So please sit back and relax, or drive relaxed, or take a walk relaxed. Whatever you're doing, just relax and enjoy this conversation with Brenda Beyal and Callie Flox.
My name is Callie Flox, and I am the director of the BYU ARTS Partnership. I've been in this position for 15 years and seen a lot of changes in schools. Education often reflects the culture of what's happening in society. And when the initiative first started, the arts were being cut out of schools and minimized. And the situation we find ourselves in today is that our schools are reflecting the challenges of our country, and we are needing to be responsive to social and emotional issues as well as cultural issues. So my background is in this initiative. We have worked to be responsive to the current needs, to the people, and to the cultural situations. And NACI evolved as in a very authentic way as part of that process, where our goal is to build teacher leaders and administrative capacity in people to serve the needs of public education. What I love about my job is it's people-centered, and it's creative and innovative, and we see immediate benefit where we're making a difference. And I used to love watching, if I would have work done in my house, I used to love watching the contractor come, because at the end of the day, you could see a visible difference. And in this job, it takes a little bit longer to see a difference, but I have daily reminders of places where we have seen a difference, where we're building things. And it's not always as visible as building a house or a room or changing the paint, but I work with people who are good at seeing and articulating those things. And so what I love about it is that we have concrete evidence all the time that we're making a difference and contributing. And it's one person at a time, one conversation at a time.
Okay, thanks. Wow, we could just ask Callie to talk about all this longer and longer. But let's move to Brenda.
Let's see, my name is Brenda Beyal, Brenda Allison Beyal, and I am Navajo Diné. We formally introduce ourselves by establishing relationships. And so in Navajo, I would say, and by doing that, I establish relationships with those who were listening and those who are among us, letting them know that my roots run deep, and that I do not ever forget that my roots are rooted in history and ancestry. And so with that, I grew up on the Navajo reservation, graduated from high school from a small town, and then moved to Brigham Young University for my bachelor's degree. And for 34 years, I taught elementary school at the same school. It's called Reese Elementary. And for some reason, the heavens or the magic of the universe allowed me to work with exceptional people who are still dear friends today. And we were a team who explored and read and discussed education in all of its different forms. And from that, we were able to create a school within a school that was called the multi-age, section of the school. And we called our 5 grades or our 5 classes Mahopa, which is a Lakota word meaning interconnectedness. But in our little multi-age program, one thing that we learned early was that it is important for children to experience with all of their senses. To do that, they had to be outdoors in the environment, and they had to do art. And so my 34 years in a public school system was spent with a wonderful team who explored and who was allowed to explore by some great administrators. And so that's where I come from. I come from the knowledge that the arts and being outdoors and in the environment are important, if not critical parts of education. And so I retired and I was able to come to the BYU ARTS Partnership. I was lucky that Callie hired me. And so now I'm a part of the Native American Curriculum Initiative. I feel very strongly about changing attitudes and changing the world, not by legislation. I think that comes at the very end. I think it comes from building relationships, having conversations, and doing the groundwork to help people change their attitudes. So I believe in an organic process. I have great dreams, but as far as marginalized groups, I've worked in a Title I school. And so I know how important it is that every child be recognized for who they are and the gifts that they come to school with. They already have whatever they need to be able to succeed. And I feel like as teachers or as a program, we need to give teachers resources and skills to help them unlock I don't know if I'd call it potential, but unlock the wonderful human being that is inside every child, whether they are brown, red, black, white, or any shades. I think my passion is looking for ways to help teachers understand the importance of an equitable education. And because of my background as a Native American, I have a great interest, if not a deep sense of urgency, that we bring the Native voice into the classroom, that we allow for reclamation, and that we make the ground fertile for kids to feel confident and be able to express themselves honestly and authentically because of the curriculum that is honest and authentic and that reaches them, their inner person.
That was beautiful, Brenda. I love how she says, I'm a part of the Native American Curriculum Initiative. But Brenda, I believe this started because of you. I don't know that you're just a part of it. I think you're the leader alongside with Callie as the director of the BYU ARTS Partnership. But in being the leader, you talk about creating fertile grounds for children to express themselves and to live in an authentic way and to be represented authentically in the classroom. So what was the fertile ground for this initiative? What did you see? What did you observe? How did this Native American Curriculum Initiative begin? And Callie, I know you're a big part of the beginning stories too. So whoever wants to start.
I would like to start that because I want to finish something that Brenda said. So in the BYU ARTS Partnership, our goal is to amplify teacher voices. So Brenda is a respected retired school teacher and came here with a whole lot of experience. What I decide to follow is whenever we give a teacher a voice, the resonance of that voice determines our response to that teacher. They have something to say, it's resonating. We try to give them a platform. We try to build their leadership skills so that what they say can be heard and help them amplify and send their message. So Brenda had been taught, as she'd been doing her job, she continued to find bias in some of our lesson plans, and she continued to express her need and desire for Native voices to be more heard. And she immediately brought forward the Peter Pan lesson plan that we had and some other things that she was concerned about. So we were having other teachers express a concern about how to share culturally sensitive material. People were getting scared to use African dances or Native dances because whatever they did, they were accused of cultural appropriations. So it was time, and Brenda's message was resonating. So it was time to give it a bigger voice. So we had her present a session at both the Learning Edge Conference and at Arts Express. And the day she presented at Arts Express, I think that was the first time. And she and Chris Roberts presented. And the message that they shared resonated with so many teachers that there were shouts and screams and calls for this information. The teachers said, "Oh my gosh, we didn't know. This is so important. This is so valuable." And that resonation grew authentically to where Jean Tokuda Irwin and I looked at each other and said, "Oh, we better fund this. This is resonating loud enough. We are listening." And Brenda has led the charge since, and her voice has continued to grow and continue to expand because she has carried her message to many other people, and they have joined in the resonation, and it's expanding one voice, one conversation at a time. It definitely would not exist without Brenda. It's her voice that we continue to amplify. And as she takes the voice forward, we continue to provide the support that that message can go forward, because so many people resonate with this message and need it so much. And in our country today, this is one of the most essential messages we can bring to the people, including the children in schools. And because it's essential, that resonation keeps reminding us this is critical, essential work that we have no choice but to support.
I don't know if I agree that it is my voice, other than the voices that have been out there have now found fertile ground. That the voices have always been out there, and it just so happens that the BYU ARTS Partnership, two stories. One, when I was hired, the very first day, Callie asked me to go home and take a look at all of the lessons. There were 14 lesson plans on the website. And she asked me to go through the lesson plans and see what I thought about them, and then come back and have a conversation about them. And I went through the lessons, and I think it was like I don't know, maybe the first or second lesson that I went through. And it was the Peter Pan lesson. And I saw the video, and I saw the teacher narrative, and I just thought, and I remember going to my husband and I said, this is going to be the shortest employment I have ever had. Because I'm supposed to go back to Callie and let her know what I think about the lessons. And I said, I'm afraid to tell her about this lesson, and I might just have to step away, or she may not be accepting of what I have to say. And if she says we're going to keep the lesson, then I'm going to have to quit because I can't promote this. And so I was so afraid to go into Callie, and I was nervous, and, I fumble over my words anyway. So 3 times that, and that's how I was in Callie's office. And I told her about it, and that was fertile ground right there. The willingness to listen and the willingness to hear. And I think that was the first no that was accepted in our partnership, or the beginning of NACI, where I extended I said no, and she accepted the no. And from that point on, I felt a little bit more confident. And so from that point on, I felt like, okay, I can do this. And so when I say fertile ground, I'm talking the BYU ARTS Partnership and how people are willing to listen. And that has carried us through to this point, that we're willing to be respectful and to really pay attention to what people are saying. The next conversation I had was when I had talked to Chris, and Chris and I had been visiting a little bit about teachers and what kind of their concerns. Chris Roberts is a dear friend of mine. We have worked together for now probably almost 40 years. And I went to Callie and I said, Callie, can we do some lessons, or this is something that I'd really be interested in, maybe massaging a little bit to see what comes of it, creating some Native American lesson plans. So when I went to Callie, I told her, somehow this follows me, these things to do with Native American issues and Native American curriculum. And maybe it's just because it's a part of me and I've always had a passion for it. But fertile ground again, Callie said, I believe in extending the invitation to people who have ideas and passions, the invitation to just move forward with them. And I will support and I will be a resource. I will scaffold them in their endeavors. And this is part of the BYU ARTS Partnership. And so that's what I call fertile ground. One of the first things that happened was, actually, it was an experience that Chris had. Chris found a lesson plan where the bear dance that can be done. It was a lesson plan about the bear dance. And I think he might have shared it or he knew about it. And there was a teacher at a school in the Provo School District who did the bear dance. And there was a Native American child who went home and told their parents that they did the bear dance. And the parents came and were quite upset the bear dance was done. And so Chris came to me and said, this is what's happened. And he says, you realize that we have done things too. And we're all learning. We all have made mistakes, and we'll continue to make mistakes, but hopefully they will not be as harsh as the mistakes that we've made before in the past. And so in our teaching, Chris, we've always had artists in residence, and we've had like Native American artist residencies. And there were things that we've done in our residency that I would never do again. And this was back, 25 years ago. And so when Chris and I would talk, we're like, oh no, I think we've done some things that are inappropriate. And so that just kind of, instead of becoming nervous, we started thinking, this is, teachers need to know that, the times have passed when you can just go ahead and let's, make a feather and stick it in the, just times have passed for those kinds of activities for children. And so we initially, and I've always been, since I'm a teacher, I've always felt like the support of the teacher is necessary. I haven't been the person who is upset with the teacher because they're doing this, but I've always wanted the teacher to have confidence in what they were teaching. And so we reached out, and so we didn't know about the bear dance. We're like, can you do the bear dance? Can you not do the bear dance? And so that was the very, very first question that we had. And so Chris and I called, we actually called the Ute tribe. We also called American West that has a lesson plan. We've called different people. And in the end, the Ute tribe said, no, the bear dance is not supposed to be done. And so with that, we felt like we got a definitive answer from an authentic source. And then that's how we maybe became aware of other teachers that may be having problems. And along the way, when we would vet lessons, just regular arts integrated lessons in the classroom, there would be teachers that would come up to me and ask just a really simple question like, can you tell me a little bit about what is cultural appropriation? I remember one teacher that said, what's cultural appropriation? If I do this lesson, is that cultural appropriation? So they had heard about it, they were nervous about it, and yet, they kind of felt like, well, I should know. Have you ever felt like, you're somewhere and you're like, everyone else knows what this term means and I don't know it. And I probably should already know, but, I've missed the boat somewhere. And so we had quite a few teachers come to us with questions like that. And so that's when Chris and I started talking, and we actually talked with Shirley Silversmith. We said, hey, tell us about, is there any kind of statewide, or are there any kinds of statements that the Department of Indian Affairs has come out with for teachers so that they can feel confident. And then we kind of told her a little bit about what we want to do. And she was just so helpful. We talked with Chuck Foster, who is the he's the Indian specialist for the USBE. And he was also helpful. And so Jean Irwin, we talked with Jean, and Jean was the one that mentioned what you're asking is what she says, I get calls every single week from people wondering what is appropriate and not appropriate in all different cultures. Because Salt Lake is such there are refugee and immigrant communities all along the Wasatch Front. And so, she says there are constantly people calling her, and she says, we need to start talking about this and maybe setting out some guidelines or maybe questions that people can ask. So anyway.
This is wonderful information about the beginnings. So you've addressed and set the stage for where the need arose and where you authentically came to this. The next question, I believe, is what were your first creative activities or instructional plans to address the needs?
You know what? I don't even know if we had instructional plans other than we just felt like it would naturally unfold. And I know that that's probably not a part of how things should be done. And, I'm sure educational professors would say, no, that's the wrong way. But Chris and I just have a way of talking and visiting, and all of a sudden a plan develops. And it's usually from our experiences. So from one, with the bear dance, we went right to the tribe. And so we knew that whatever we did, we wanted it to come from the tribes. Because there are a lot of lesson plans out there that teachers can choose from, Native American themed lesson plans, but there wasn't any there that teachers could really feel confident about. And, because like I could write lesson plans and I could say, well, I'm Native American and I'm writing this lesson plan, and I could write about the Ute, but am I really an expert on the Ute? And is this really how the Ute voice would share this information? And so from the very beginning, when we went to the Ute tribe and we got a definitive answer from them, we knew that's what we need to do. And then Chris said, wouldn't it be great? He said, if our lesson plans, or if the lesson plans that were created had that seal of approval, he says, you know how you have that USDA seal of approval on different meats, or, like this is certified, or like on tuna fish, this is dolphin free, this is, and he says, wouldn't it be great if we just put it, and we didn't necessarily think it would be the seal, but we just knew it would be the tribal seal, but we thought this is the seal of approval. And we would go to the tribe and we'd write the lessons and we would get their seal of approval. And initially we thought that we would be the ones that kind of, came up with the lessons. But then as we talked more and more, we realized, Native people know what they would like children to know about them. A lot of times we depend on historians or educators, like, oh yeah, this is what they should know about Native Americans. But who knows best what should be known about them but the tribes themselves? And so that just came out through our talk and our visiting. And so that's kind of how the plan evolved. And we already knew that we were part of the BYU ARTS Partnership. Both Chris and I know how valuable it is for children to have the arts in their classrooms, and what a learning strategy it is. It is just a powerful way of teaching. And so we already had that. We knew that it had to involve the arts. And so then we just, it just kind of built a little bit upon, one another.
The next step was, Brenda had this plan to go talk to people about, what do you want the children to know? And we just took members of the team to support that. So Emily and Rachel were already employees at BYU working on lesson plans, and Brenda just needed people to do the work.
Going back to fertile ground, I was always shocked that Callie was willing, like, let's have Emily and Rachel work on it with you. And I'm just thinking, Callie is willing to let people work on really work on this, because I don't know what it is. I've always been hesitant, and I've worried about the amount of hours that I spend on it. And I think maybe it's because I wondered if it's important enough for white people to spend their resources on. I know as a Native American, for me, I would spend the time on it. And in the beginning, there were a lot of times that I didn't report the time that I spent on it because I just didn't know if it was important enough to use BYU money for it. Does that make sense? I don't know. And then every time she asks, okay, do you need anybody else, or do you need anything? I still am hesitant because I think I'm taking away from something that might be more important for, and I don't think I think of it as an us and them, but away from the white people. I don't know what tell me, help me understand my thinking.
I think Callie can respond to that. I remember you sitting in her office, having many long conversations together. And my perspective on that was that she was always trying to open the door to let you see yourself as a leader. So I'll let her say more.
Each one of us, as we find our voice, we always continue asking the question, do I have something of value or do I not? And Brenda had her personal journey of does her personal voice matter or not? And then she also had carried the responsibility of knowing she was leading something for many voices. And her question of, is this voice worthy of white people's money? The simple answer is, our entire society will be blessed and will benefit from increasing our understanding of each other and from creating a society where there is more love, more understanding, more acceptance, more listening. And it isn't a white people or a brown people issue. It's a humanity issue. And as we strengthen humanity and as we work together as diverse people, the fact that we have the opportunity to model listening, to model respect, to model elevating marginalized voices, and to do it in a way that's concrete and is significant, it is what our country is crying for right now. And it is answering so many needs that the investment is small compared to the blessings that we've already gotten back. The return on this investment is already significant, and it will change people of all colors as humanity strengthens.
Well said. So there's I remember at the incipiency of the initiative, there was some great instruction done in our professional development programs on selecting appropriate children's books, specifically focused on Native American themed children's books. And around that time, there was also the beginning developments of questions teachers could consider when trying to practice a more culturally responsive pedagogy. Is that what kind of comes next in the timeline of this story, or is there something that comes before this?
I think what came before it is after we decided, yes, we want to begin creating lesson plans, and we decided that we wanted to go to the different tribes. I initially I thought, okay, we'll get all the content, and then after that, we will assign artists to work on them, and then we'll go back to the tribes. And so I started contacting all of these tribes, and then realized that every tribe had their own pace. And I remember telling Callie that, yes, we will have 14 lessons done. We're going to have 25 lessons done, and by this date. And this helped me see once again how Native people straddle the two worlds. And maybe because I was trying to meet like and I don't know what we want to call it, the white man's way of doing things. You set a deadline and then you just do it no matter what. And then I was working with tribes that were on a different timeline. That some of them wanted us to meet with their tribal council. Some of them wanted to, and then I thought that it would just be over the phone. Like, okay, I'm just going to talk to you over the phone, or I'll send you an email. But then I realized that it meant maybe going to the tribe and opening up or establishing a relationship. And so one of the first things that I think we recognized was that there was a different pace, not only to every tribe, but also between Native tribes in general and the regular, what do you call it, white man's world, where, we get things done. And I felt I was trying to straddle it. And I know for me, a mistake that I made is not helping Callie or the partnership see the different timing of actually telling about it, and maybe helping people to understand that there was a different timeline. And so when we were invited to present at Weber State, we all went, and I thought I'd better prepare Callie and let her know a little bit about things. And, we talked about how to introduce yourself. And then at that time, I realized maybe I need to let the BYU Arts Partnership know a little bit more about Native people and their ways and their mannerisms and the way they do things. So I found myself trying to keep the two different worlds apart rather than, helping create that understanding. And so it was Callie once again asking, okay, how do we do this? And how do we, and then when we went there, I really felt like this is what we need. We need Native American people meeting with educators like us and talking and visiting and establishing a relationship. And so that probably was the next step before we ever went to questions and guidelines. As far as questions and guidelines, Callie asked me the very first time I was hired to come up with 3 questions that maybe teachers could ask themselves. And so I sat and I thought and I read and I visited with people, and I visited with some of my Native friends. And then that's when I came up with a couple of the questions. And those questions have stood the test of time, where now we've built on those questions. But it was Callie asking me to come up with some questions.
This idea of keeping the two worlds apart or bringing them together, we realized very early that there are no answers. And that's why we started pursuing, all we need to teach people is to ask the right questions, because we cannot give them any answers. And we realized that when I listened to Brenda talk about white man's time versus Native time, a creative artist, even in the white world, has to honor what we traditionally know as Native time. There are pockets of people in the white man's world who have to honor circular time, who have to honor the evolution of things. And part of that natural evolution of things was the discovery that we will never be able to give people the answers in this initiative. What can and can't be taught? Oh, the 3 different tribes have 3 different answers on this same question. It was very clear in that first meeting. There will never be answers in this initiative, and that is why we began designing questions. And the first question was, what do you want the children to know about you, about your tribe? Second question was for a teacher using with kids, what do you want me to know about you to help me be your teacher? And then we set out to discuss those questions.
And then we have another set of questions that are specifically for teachers when they're looking at resources or materials to use in their classrooms. Like one of the first ones was, am I reinforcing stereotypes? I think that was the first question that we asked teachers to ask themselves. And then so we've come up with several other questions. Am I homogenizing culture? Was another one that teachers can ask themselves, so that they're not saying, well, can I use this? And so we're not the definitive answer, but we can say, look at these sets of questions, and then maybe you can come to an answer, within yourself.
The only way we're going to create empathy and understanding is to transform people from the inside. And if they're not doing the reflective work and improving their judgment, then we're again superimposing answers on them. And the point our society is at in healing is the point of people taking personal responsibility for their own judgment and their own decision making. And that's the only way we're going to have improved relationships across our racial divides right now.
Yes, when we look inward, then we're able to see what kind of biases we already have within ourselves. And especially am I reinforcing stereotypes? We can ask that just in our personal lives, in our language that we use, in our mannerisms. Am I homogenizing culture when we talk, when you use a vocabulary or language that clumps people together? So I feel like some of these questions could just be used just in general, but we came up with them specifically for teachers to put up against resources that they wanted to use in their classrooms. So our initial question when we went to the tribes, we wanted to ask them, what would you like the children of Utah to know about your culture, your tribe, your history? And from that, we realized that there was timing, and that going to all 8 tribes at once was probably not the best plan, and that we needed to concentrate on one tribe, really focus on relationship building, focus on their what they wanted us to do. And so now what we've done is we're just going from one tribe to the next. And that has really been helpful. Even though we have started opening up relationships, it's just been important for us to just focus on one tribe at a time. And each tribe is different. It just, their dynamics, the way they respond to us, how they respond, how they want us to work with them has been different. And it's been exciting. It hasn't, it's not set the way things are done. So then we started working with one tribe after another. And then I think the questions came because it always went back to the teachers. We were started to do professional development, and we wanted to build confidence and capacity in teachers so that they could build culturally sensitive classrooms. So our work with the tribes influenced the questions that we were able to come up with in the guidelines as we worked with the teachers. And that's what why I think our PD is going to be so strong, because we're not an isolated group of people coming up with PD because we think that we know what people need, but rather because of our work with tribes and our relationships, we glean from them, or we have their influence in PD development. So and then as far as the books, it was just kind of a natural evolution. It wasn't anything that we planned. It was just, some people started asking about books. Some teachers began asking, and then Chris and I began studying and talking and visiting, and that's how that came about.
We came to this realization that there will never be answers, that there will only be questions. And then we had guiding principles that we started pulling together. But all of that is the water that we breathe. The stepping stones within the water we breathe, I think, is represented in the lesson plans and each conversation with the tribes in a sequential order.
You have a really well-oiled machine for lesson plan production, Brenda, in the way that you lead that lesson plan team and the research that the team does and the way that they get edited and revised and edited over and over again so that they're really good quality polished product. But this initiative has not always been linear lesson plan stepping stones, because creative projects, presentations, and other messaging deliverables have continued to branch off from that original path of creating lesson plans to honor Native voices about what they want children to know about their tribe. So tell me some more about that story.
Well, one really great aspect of it is the Native American teaching artist roster. Jean Irwin, from the beginning, had this idea But as we have moved forward in the initiative, we find how important that idea is to the whole initiative. The idea of helping Native artists have a section on the Utah Artist roster and giving them a platform where people can come and ask them to come and do presentations or workshops for them is fantastic. It comes from, and I have to say, Alan Groves was one of the very first artists that we contacted. And one of the things that he said was, I think it's important to inspire Native as things are Native inspired. For so many years, we think things ought to be Native inspired. And some of our lessons are Native inspired, but we always have to remember to inspire Native. And so we feel like and this comes from Callie, a true partnership is where every partnership gains or has equal fruits, I guess. And so for these artists, we want to offer PD that will help them to turn their assemblies that they're asked to present at, or their performances or their demonstrations, move it beyond just a demonstration and performance, but actually have teachers learn about what they see on the stage. And so that's been one great fruit. Another one is just, the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation coming to us. And this was all because of our relationship building. We wrote lesson plans. They like our lesson plans. They have given their seal. And with that, we've become a trusted partner. And so during this pandemic, when they weren't able to have their commemoration ceremony and they didn't know how to film it and how to have their tribal members see the commemoration ceremony because of the restrictions, they just said, how do we do this and what can we do? And we stepped in. And so that to me was it was a wonderful, a delicious part of what has happened because of our labors. And we've got tons of material that has allowed us to maybe move forward in different directions. We also have a Jamie Kamala Wood, who has Corey Watsumatsu listened to us talk about the project. And she said, can I invite Jamie Kamala Wood to our meeting? And she did. And now what we're doing is we're taking Living Legends videos and extending those beyond just something you watch. We're also using those as springboards into great lessons and content that will expand people's understanding and knowledge of Native American dance. So that's another thing that we've been able to do. Our book project is another one. Just one that I really didn't think, I didn't realize was such a wonderful part of this is that we've been able to connect with artists and experts or cultural standard bearers within our community and get video of them. Lorraine Mariano, we wanted something, she was traveling. We said, can we just videotape you just saying a couple of words? And now we are the last people to have her on videotape before she died from COVID. We captured who she was. And so, things like that. Michelle Reyes, who has an amazing story about her weaving experience, we've been able to capture that. We've been able to, right now, Connor Chi, who is a pianist, whose work that we wanted to use in one of our lessons, I reached out to him. And now Jen Purdy is going to do an interview with him so that we get his story. I mean, he left to go to, I think it's Juilliard he went to, but he came back to near the reservation, and he has used his Native background to influence his talent at playing the piano. And so, there's just those little nuggets that have come because we wanted to write lesson plans. And then now the professional development, which in the beginning I thought, how are they going to do it? Is that going to work? And then Of course it's going to, because we've got fantastic people like Stephanie and obviously Heather, who is phenomenal at anything that she does, and then Callie to guide it. I don't worry about the professional development because I feel like when we meet with our arts and culture meeting, we're able to talk and visit, and we're all starting to understand a little bit more about Native American pedagogy and how it works. And I just feel like we have lots of fruit that has come from lesson plans.
Yes. And we haven't even mentioned your Native American Thanksgiving dinners that we've had at leadership team, because those have been so wonderful and have been this great cultural moment that has brought our team together, and you've educated us and nourished our bodies. And yeah, there have been so many creative projects outside of lesson plans that continue to blossom, and Callie continues to support as the director of the partnership. But I also you did mention something you learned from Callie about what partnership means. And I wondered if Callie wanted to add any thoughts about how this initiative models partnership principles.
When we talked earlier about Brenda's question, why is this worthy of white people's money to address a Native American issue? What I wish I'd added at that point is when we take on a partnership, we don't get to decide how it benefits each partner. What we know is that each partner's voice gets to be heard so that their needs are being met. And from the non-Native community, the need was, help me understand so I stop making mistakes. And that need was as great as the Native Americans' need to be heard and have a voice. So we're demonstrating partnership principles in that everyone's voice matters, everyone's needs evolved, everyone's opportunities, strengths, weaknesses, challenges, we put it all together. And as long as we're listening to each stakeholder, the benefits, they're in charge to speak to the manifestation of the benefits that they are looking for. And who has the resources? Everyone has different kinds of resources. So is the time of the tribal people putting in their efforts to take this back to their communities, does that have any more value than the fact that we happen to have an endowment for the arts? You can't compare the value of what each partner brings, and you can't compare how the benefit is any greater for one. Each partner will receive as much benefit as we can muster and as they can articulate and communicate. And that is what partnership is. And we will continue building those relationships for meaningful partnerships across the initiative and everything else we do in the BYU Arts Partnership.
And I've said this before, but you can offer a seat at the table, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're being heard at the table. And I think true partnership is where you are being heard. And, so many people say, we've given them a seat at the table, but are they being heard? Are they being valued? Are they being acknowledged? And so I feel like with our partnership and NACI, we really try to go beyond just the seat.
Artful Teaching is made possible by the BYU Arts Partnership and the McKay School of Education. Thanks to James Houston for editing this podcast. Music was generously provided by Connor Chi, a Navajo Diné composer and performer.
And special thanks to all of the teachers who are changing lives every day while serving in schools.
If you like what you heard, please leave us a review. You can find all the show notes for this episode and more resources at advancingartsleadership.com.
And don't forget to check out our tribe-approved lesson plans on the website as well.
I'm Heather Francis.
And I'm Callie Flox.
And I'm Brenda Beyal.
Wishing you an artful journey.